Hi, welcome to the Dan Bradbury podcast, where turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. In this podcast, I'll bring you resources, tips, interviews, and lots more to help to grow your business and make it less dependent on you. Hi, I'm Dan Bradbury.
And I'm Till from Warson.
And this is the Dan Bradbury podcast.
Indeed it is. Hey, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Although, risk... I was thinking just on the way to recording this that there's a very real danger that we're going to turn into the old men that just at the start of the podcast grumble about our ailments. I've had a terrible, terrible tragedy occur this morning.
You sound like me 4 weeks ago. Did you bite your tongue?
No, worse. I broke my tooth. You're getting old. When I was in my early 20s, because I'm a really health obsessed. For the podcast listeners that don't know, like my passion away from here is like I'll get every test, every doohickey, every wearable. I mean, right now as we're on this podcast, if you're on the video, you can see not one, not two, but three wearable devices that I've got. All right, which all basically do the same thing. But why have one when you can have three?
Of course.
So when I was in my early 20s, when I was a kid, I took terrible care of my teeth. So I had loads of fillings, and they were the metal fillings. And then I read something in my early 20s that freaked me out about these metal amalgam fillings. So I went and got them all replaced. Yep. And I remember the dentist at the time, because again, this was 20 years ago now, saying, oh, these new white fillings aren't as strong, which means that, they'll all fail in about 10 years' time. And they lasted a bit longer. But in the last few years, like my teeth like to randomly explode at the most inopportune times. So, but don't worry, I'm suitably painkillered up. So if I get a bit incoherent in this meeting or I start drooling from the side of my mouth, that's why. But
it's that you've numbed up your mouth so much. By the way, I feel for you because I think I lost a piece of my tooth. I think it was about a month or two ago as well. So I feel for you, my friend. And you're right. We're old and we're falling apart. It sucks.
All right, so and now I can't even remember why we're here. No, let's get to
what's this podcast? The Old Man Show. Yeah.
Well, actually, obviously, this episode we're talking about all things marketing, and it's interesting as a sector. I'd say a business that wouldn't appear to be. I mean, tell me, comment below this thread if you disagree with the statement. But dentists seem to be swamped. I mean, my dentist. So bear in mind, this is an emergency appointment over 1 week's time, a week from today. It's like, holy shit. And it's like they've got more more business they can handle.
I've got a story for you. If you really want to be in a great industry, don't be a human dentist. Be a pet dentist.
You know what?
My dog cracked her tooth. This was a couple of years ago. She cracked her tooth chewing on an elk antler, which, by the way, for those of you who have pets, don't give elk antlers to your dogs because they can literally chew on them so hard they crack their tooth. So she busted a molar, and I had to book an appointment with a dog dentist. 2 months my poor dog had to suffer until I could get in to have her tooth fixed.
And you're going to tell me that a dog dentist is like a real dentist, except it's 5 times more expensive?
Of course. Yeah. I don't remember how much I paid, but it was stupid. It was ridiculous. And my poor puppy had to wait for 2 months with a cracked tooth. I mean, just like a split right up in the molar. Poor thing.
It just shows you that there's all kind of weird niches. One of the things I love about Mastermind is you get to hear about all kind of weird industries, but don't get me started about dog dentists because courtesy of Lisa from Labradoodles, who was on this podcast earlier this year. I don't know which episode number. I have a beautiful Labradoodle puppy who is, nearly a year and a half old, 15 months old. Anyway, I swear to God, Topher, my partner, she loves this dog more than anything in the world, including me, I hasten to add.
Yeah. Well, and first off, it smells better. It is more loyal. Not making a comment about your loyalty, but let's just face it, there's nothing more loyal than a dog. I would imagine the dog greets her much more excitingly when she comes back home.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And anyway, so yesterday she straight up pitched me, and I made the mistake of thinking she was joking. She straight up pitched me. She's like, maybe we should take the dog to a chiropractor. And so listen. So I had a very short 2-word response to this thing. I actually thought she was joking. And I went, no, they don't even. I'm like, first of all, why do you say that? And she was like,
Well,
oh, well, when she's walking, because we were walking her at the time, she's going, look, she kind of like, she kinks and she's got a long back and she kind of kinks. Not because the dog's demonstrated any kind of pain or anything. I'm just like,
Right.
I'm like, no, it's a dog. It's fine. And I can hear all the dog lovers really screaming at me, even making this remark. And I went, are there even things such as dog chiropractors? And I Google it. And sure enough, there are dog chiropractors. And it's not like a rare, weird thing. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like a real chiropractor, like a proper chiropractor. And
Yes.
actually, some people listening to this will even hate chiropractic. I personally am a fan of chiropractic, get adjusted all the time.
Yeah.
To go along with my 3 wearables, they tell me that it's done a good job. And my body responds well to chiropractic. But it's about 5 times more expensive. So, and I said to my partner, so we're not taking the dog. I said, even if we took the dog, I said, you know what would happen, don't you? Like, you'd go in, they give you some spiel, and before you know it, you're going to tell me that my dog needs to go to the chiropractor 3 times a week. For the
Exactly
rest,
right. You'd be up on a maintenance
life.
program. Hell yes, that's exactly what would happen. And the dog would still walk with a waddle.
Yeah, right.
Nothing would change. Yes.
So there's probably, even though we haven't started the podcast properly yet, there's probably a lesson there just about the power of niche. It's kind of just.
Well, to be fair, we actually have started the podcast. This we're well into the podcast. We just haven't gotten around to talking about the topic.
Yeah, there's stuff that we actually planned that seems to make sense, that was coherent, there's value add. Well, in seriousness, I think that it's more for earlier stage businesses and established brands. But for me, one of the easiest ways, when you're starting a business, you've got to attract clients, right? And that's a marketing positioning thing. Yeah. And one of the easiest ways to get a position, if you don't have authority yet, one of the easiest routes is to be niche. Because the more specialized it is, you immediately eliminate the competition. So you're not being compared to other people. Yeah. And typically, as it gets more specialist, the price point goes up.
Well, that's the battle, right? Especially in the startup mode, because when people start up, they'll take anything, right? So you're kind of like I think one of the best descriptions from this came from Peter Montoya, who wrote the brand called Uni. He says there's 3 types of marketing channels. You can have wide to narrow, narrow to wide, or narrow to narrow, but you cannot have wide to wide, which basically is I do all things for everyone.
Right, that conglomerate of the 60s.
You can do all things for one type of people, or you can do one thing for everybody, but you can't be everything there, right? And the interesting is when you start off, you rarely have that luxury, right? So you either got to start off wide to narrow, I do everything for one group of people, or you start off narrow to wide, I do one thing for everybody. And then as you build, you kind of trim that down to hopefully get to that narrow to narrow phase, meaning I'm a chiropractor for golden doodles.
Yes.
For business owners that have way too much money and want to subscribe their dog to chiropractic maintenance.
Let's rock on. So let's talk about the news of the week.
News of the week is an interesting one. It is all about the recession coming up and marketing advice. Now, I think we've all heard, if you've certainly been through a recession before, if not, maybe this is your first one, buckle up, get ready for the ride. One of the principal foundations of recession survival is do not cut your ad spend. Keep marketing. In some cases, maybe even increase your marketing. Well, there's an article that I found online that talks about a contrarian opinion to that. And I love all articles that make me question my own beliefs and think things differently. And what they state is that perhaps continuing your ad spend or your marketing budget during a recession is not good for victim businesses. So you've got to be aware of what is your industry and are you actually doing something that's perfect? And there's 2 reasons. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to chatting about this because, I will say 2 points. One, I love contrarian points of view. I mean, this is Ray Dalio, like a principle. Yeah. It's like find the smartest people who disagree with you and have a conversation. And I think that's just intelligent. You don't want just confirmation bias. I love it when I get somebody who challenges my thinking. So I'm going to disclose up front, Topher, because off camera, I consciously said I don't want to dive too deep into the article. I want to have the debate live on air because inside of our mastermind program, when we analysed everybody in the program's performance over the most recent recession, or specifically over the COVID lockdown
pandemic.
period, over the pandemic,
it was a recession. What can you? No other way.
The businesses that thrive the most are the ones that never turned off their advertising. So
Correct.
the people that had the biggest advances were the people that kept up the ad spend, and the people that kind of cut back too soon, it kind of hurt them in relative terms. So I'm looking forward to this contrarian point of view, because instinctively I want to say no, like, you need to keep spending. So
that's exactly what I thought too. I was like, what? This is horrible advice. Well, their logic is twofold. The first one is they say that you may not survive to see the payback from their the investment. So according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, 9,000 retailers closed during the first half of 2021 and 11,000 closed over the same period in 2020, which is up from 6,000 in 2017. So I guess what they're saying that is, depending upon if you're and we'll talk about what a victim industry is here in a second, but if you're in a victim industry, just through the very nature of the fact that you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, when you increase your ad spend or maintain your ad spend, all of that money should have been given toward stopping the bleeding and preservation to survive through it. So you have your cash flow. Instead of spending it on marketing, which is futile, you hold on to that, you keep it, and then you keep it to stay alive so you can last through the recession and then bump up your market spend. So that's their first logic.
Yeah, so I wouldn't understand what these victim industries are, because I think that there's a clue perhaps, like you're not going to survive to get the payback. I mean, that's probably true in any recession, but probably especially in inflationary times. So what's their definition of a victim industry?
Yeah, let's see. I can find it for you here. A victim industry. I should have highlighted this. Well, while I'm looking for the victim industry as I talk and scroll through the website at the exact same time, the second reason is, first one is you may not survive. The second one is you may not see the benefit. There may not be a cost benefit analysis. It may not make a difference one way or the other. Is there other?
I think I found it. So the victim sectors are sectors. Yeah, I was spot on. Sectors which are really struggling through inflation. So what that means to me, I'm sure there's a clearer definition in the article, but what that means to me is any businesses. If I think about get ready, Topher, it's coming. If I think about what Warren Buffett has to say about inflation,
this might be a record. We're not that far into the meeting here.
No, unfortunately for me, we were talking about my tooth, which kind of means it's taking a bit longer. But the problem is some businesses require capital expenditure, right?
Yes.
So businesses that require significant capital expenditure get eroded by inflation. I mean, to be clear, inflation. Let's go back to 101. Inflation is the increase in prices for the same unit. So if a hamburger costs £1 and a year later it costs £1.10, the inflation on price of hamburgers is 10%, right?
Which from an econometrics means the dollar or the pound or the euro or the yen is worth less than it was a year ago.
Correct.
The devaluing
you can make more money, but you buy less hamburgers. Right, like more money doesn't buy you as much hamburger, right, per pound or per dollar. So any business that requires capital expenditure to stay in business gets hurt. So if I make it up at high speed, if you've got £1 million business that's a chauffeur, like a limousine business, and you make $100,000 in profit, but at the end of the year you've got to buy new limousine to like keep the thing rolling, but the price of limousines has gone up from $100,000 to $120,000 to buy the next year's limousine to keep the thing turning. Then all of a sudden, actually you made profit, but you're actually out of business because you can't afford the capital expenditure because of inflation. So here it's saying that any business that that's affected by inflation, so capital expenditure intensive businesses are the case. So people listening that are in the property sectors where they've got a lot of material costs, especially when it's overseas, is one. Another one which notoriously struggles with inflation is low margin businesses. So we got businesses that have got currency fluctuations as well. So like the pound at the time we're recording this, it's not long after a crash of the pound against the dollar, which meant that they're buying in dollars, but they're invoicing in, or they're selling in pounds. So their margin.
Can you think of a specific business owner who's been impacted by that just recently?
You know what? I don't want to talk about it. Stupid damn Americans. So, but actually, if you think about it, it's true lose-lose. Because if you had, and there's a few in Mastermind actually that have got British businesses, but they outsource to the US, etc. And you kind of go, the American contractors or employees aren't getting paid more.
Right. Yeah, I'm not benefiting.
But it's costing the employers. Well, I mean, inflation on $0 pay slip isn't that much, Toby. It's fine. Right. There's no cost. But yes. So some people say your services are worth exactly what I pay for them. So there's people with currency fluctuations are getting hammered by inflation, albeit that's not exactly the same. And the last one is just low margin businesses, which, a lot of retail, they sift a high turnover, relatively low margins compared to, say, B2B services. And then all of a sudden, if they've got to buy stock and the stock's going up, the cost of the stock's going up, but they can't always pass on that increase, then the margin just gets squeezed. So that's why I think in this article, they'll reference retail a lot.
Yeah,
but
they do. In fact, I found the specific industries that they talk about are furniture, electronics, food delivery, homeware, and theaters and concerts are all victim sectors over the next year. Now, by the way, I think what they're implying then is that depending upon the context of the recession, there may be different victim industries. But in this particular recession, the ones to look out for: furniture, electronics, food delivery, homeware, theaters, concerts, are the ones that are going to suffer the most.
Now I don't want to be.
It may not be worthwhile.
I don't want to be dismissive. I don't want to be dismissive, but to a certain degree, you go, I hate. Sometimes you kind of go, they're just like an article written to make a story. But if it was clean cut for every business owner, the game would be easy, right? If it was easy, everybody would win in the game. So it's always context specific, and that's why it requires you to think. In fact, I'm going to squeeze in another Buffett quote, albeit it's paraphrased. I can't remember the exact quote. It's saying he's talking about, if you want to beat the market, effectively you've got to be contrarian, because inherently if you make the same bets that the market's making, you are the market, so you're going to get the average return. But Buffett pointed out that being contrarian isn't alone to win, because after all, he's recommending buy index funds over the long term for the average investor. That's going to do great. And if you just did the opposite, the average investor, you could lose all your money. And he said actually the key, shockingly, is to learn how to think independently and do your own analysis to look out for those opportunities that are missed by the market. And even though he was talking about the stock market, for those listening, we're talking about your sector. What is everybody doing? Well, if you do what everybody's doing, if you're in an industry that's a rising tide, you'll go up with it, but you're not going to go up any faster than it.
Yeah. Well, when you say your industry, by the way, it's also your industry in the context of what's happening. Right?
Yes.
That's important as well, because, industries may not change, but the context in which they exist do. Right? In fact, keep that thought, and then I'll give you a great example of the.
So the question is, how are you performing compared to the competition? Right? So the industry does well, the industry does poorly, but let's even just pretend for, in theory's sake, the industry is level. Or the outsized return, the overachievers, the outsiders, they're outliers. Inherently aren't doing what everything else does. I mean, this is what I got from my friend Jay Abraham, who's also recorded on this podcast a while ago. Go back and search in the feed. Inherently, the true innovation typically comes from ideas that come from outside the industry. Otherwise, you're only going to get plus or minus 5 or 10%. When there's significant disruption, it's normally an idea that's been adopted elsewhere that gets mapped over into a new industry.
Yep. Here's a perfect example of that. One of the victim industries in this article, once again, it's just one article, right, is theaters. Now, historically, theaters have always done really good in a recession. They've been considered to be a relatively recession-proof. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the past recessions, theaters, actually, their sales go up. And because
people are looking to escape and...
yeah, they're looking for an escape, right? But now if you think about how that escape happens in the context of today, right? Also probably accelerated by the pandemic, is that the last time we had a recession, think about this, if you want to feel old, Dan, the last time we had a true recession, not the pandemic temporary quick one, right?
Yes,
But
the great financial
recession,
crisis.
back in 2007, 2008, that was before we had
Facebook,
Apple
YouTube.
TV, Netflix, like all of those things. I mean, the companies were around, but they weren't nearly as prolific as they are, and they weren't nearly as ubiquitous. Nowadays, it's considered a hassle to go to a theater because you can get the exact same movies for Apple TV. Like a family will go, wait a minute, we go to the theater, we have to pay for $10, $15 a head, plus the food, but we can go to Apple TV and we can rent that same movie for $25. That's a deal. Right. And when you look at the price of fuel has gone up considerably, all of a sudden people are starting to go, I can escape, but I can escape in my house.
Also the quality of the input, right? As in, even the highest quality home televisions aren't going to compete with cinema quality, but they're a lot closer than they were.
They're getting close, sure bet, yeah. In fact, a lot of people have home theaters now, which was not a thing except for ultra wealthy people back in 2007. Home theaters wasn't a thing back then.
I was at a friend's house, a wealthy friend's house. So I won't mention his name because he'll hate me naming him on the podcast. I'm so tempted to do it now. But anyway,
you really should.
There was a room that was, I don't know, it was probably only like 10 feet by 15 feet. A small room.
Please say it's a theater, not a sex dungeon. Please say it's a theater, not a sex dungeon.
No comment. No. But the entire wall of one side of this room, basically, there was only two things in this room. There was a television, right? The biggest television I've ever seen, and an armchair. And he's an F1 nut, right? So literally the whole room. And if you sit in the chair and watching Formula One, because again, it's not widescreen, it's the whole
it's the whole wall,
right?
Yeah, it's immersive.
And with the speakers, it is unbelievable. And I'm not a big major F1 fan, but I have been. I do love Monaco, so I've been to an F1 race in Monaco, and whilst it was a great experience, actually the race itself was hard because you're squeezed up in a tiny little flat overlooking the track and kind of peering down and seeing these little dots roam away versus being in the car, right? Totally immersed. And I kind of go, and I know that's not a theater, but it's a not dissimilar analogy. I paid a fortune to go there, stay there. Right.
Yeah. By the way, so side note on this one, I cannot wait. We have to do a podcast about this when it finally comes in. Have you ever seen those online ads on social media that just seem too good to be true? Right? And they're usually like some kind of a China-based corporation where the things are just dirt cheap. And you're like, oh my God, everywhere else, this is $1,000. How's it only $50? You ever seen these ads?
Yes.
First one I bought was a steady cam stabilizer. About $2,000. I bought one and it was this little cheap plastic thing that just had nothing at all.
I missed the chance to destroy you before you even commented. I was going to say, yeah, I've seen the ads, but I've never been stupid enough to buy one of those things. I got to go, it can't be true.
Well, here's the thing. So I like to think I'm wiser now because I fell for it once, but I saw one the other day, which was just too tempting not to buy. It was and I know I've thrown my money away, but I had to buy this because it was like $86, I think was the sale price, $86 for
down from $999.
Oh, no, more than that. Yeah. It's a 120-inch 4K flexible slim TV, like it can wobble. It's like that new technology, the TV. That's a 10-foot TV. My studio right now, that will literally be wall to wall, just so you're saying, right? For $86. I thought it's worth the $86 just to do a podcast on how stupid of a purchase this is. So yeah, I can't wait till it comes in. And we'll definitely have to have a reveal. Maybe we'll do an unboxing on this show.
What could possibly go wrong so far? I mean,
well, that's my curiosity is how are they? Like, I'm guessing it's going to be like a poster or something, like of the actual picture they showed on the commercial. See, another thing.
It's the screen. It's not. It's got no electronics. It's not wired.
Something like that. It's going to be something like that. A buddy of mine also bought some metal business cards. He was like, because he does upcycling wardrobes, right? He'll take like Gucci, all these expensive designer clothes, go to secondhand stores, and then he'll paint them and sell them for $500, right? So really cool jackets. I'm not cool enough to wear his wardrobe, and he wanted to really create that upscale image.
I've got the chap's name. Is this the guy that I met when I came down out to
He was the photographer who took your headshots. Yes, Mike McCoy. Yeah, great artist, right?
And I saw some of the jackets that were hanging in the studio. And I was exactly the same.
Cool.
I can be particular to fashion. I'm like, oh yeah. And he said, oh, do you want to try one on, like for the photos? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, like, I'm not cool enough.
Yeah, I'm now the old man that's trying to look cool and young and.
That's exactly. He did the same thing. I was like, I'm going to look really desperate if I'm wearing this jacket. It's like it's like a 50-year-old man wearing an Affliction shirt in the 80s or something. Anyway, but he does these great recycles, right? So he wanted to really create some cool tags, and he found a company who was selling metal business cards for like $20 for 1,000 of them, and he bought them, and they were paper business cards with that 1980s Photoshop metal effect on them. They weren't even metal. So yeah,
I love that. Well, actually, that's a perfect tee up. That's a perfect tee up. So for the next segment, like trying to pretend. Yeah, exactly. Trying to pretend to be something you're not. Let's talk about the fail of the week. So the fail of the week this week is Instagram trying to be like TikTok. And whilst I personally detest social media, and like a lot of people listening to this, I've got children. Yeah, correct. I've got children, right? So I for somebody that hates TikTok, I must have cumulatively, 10 hours of TikTok going on in my house every single day.
Do you walk by the living room where your kids are there and they have their phones set up and they're practicing the dances and all that stuff? Do you have that in your house all the time?
Unfortunately, so yes. I've got two girls. I've got two girls and one boy.
Rarely in life do I feel sorry for you. In fact, generally, I get pleasure out of your misery. This is one of those that I actually feel for you on this one. I can't even enjoy the misery that you must feel for that, because that's how.
So I'm torn. We need to get back to the story, but I'm torn because on the one hand, yes, overall that's horrendous. But actually, you should see my eldest daughter's, who's 13 at the time of recording this, some of her video editing skills. Like she stuff 5-10 years ago, you'd be paying top dollar to get this stuff, and she'll just do like clips of her friends like on holiday or whatever, and she'll do like an epic video so there's certain skills have been crafted, but I'll just say the content of a lot of this stuff is somewhat inane by my old man.
Let's go back to that fail though. It's Instagram. We're ripping on TikTok. Why should we let's rip on Instagram. Why should we rip on Instagram?
Yeah, well, it's ultimately it's trying to be like one of the cool kids, right? So it's Instagram trying to be like TikTok. So here's an interesting stat from I can't pronounce it right. Statista.
Statista.com.
There you go. So talking about the social media sites, the time that they took from launching to get 1 billion active users.
Right.
So Facebook was 8.6 years, YouTube 7 years, WhatsApp 7 years, Instagram 7.7 years, and TikTok's done it in just 5 years. So it's the up and coming thing. What was new and on vogue and cool a few years ago is now the establishment. Facebook and YouTube is now the establishment, and like time is compressed in social media. Because Tova, I can remember telling my mastermind members, them telling me about this new site which was specifically only for videos called YouTube, and I'm ashamed to admit to it, but I can remember telling them saying, it's never going to catch on. It's not going to catch on, because I was looking myopically at the internet speed back in those days when it was just dial up and going, that's never going to work, right? Which is ridiculous. So critical thinking required wherever you're getting your advice from, including from this podcast. But the point is, TikTok's the upcoming trend, and that it's kind of shorter.
Well, it's not the upcoming trend; it is the trend right now.
Oh,
That's the problem.
Yes,
that's the problem.
And so Instagram are trying to copy it. Yeah. So Instagram are trying to not miss the boat and like adapt to what's going on. So much so that one of the Kardashians. I
Both
think
of
it was
them.
Chloe.
Both
Oh,
Kardashians. I
well,
think.
there's more than two, but
Yeah.
you're showing your age now. So
The two
there's
girls. Yeah.
I think there's 76 girls. But anyway, whatever. Two Kardashians have lobbied their umpteen million followers to sign a petition.
I think it's 680 million followers.
I mean, just get your head around that.
Yeah.
Get your head around that. 680 million.
By the way, to put that in perspective, right? To put that in perspective, at the height of TV, like when there was only 3 channels and you had like ABC, NBC, CBS or whatever, and you'd have like Walter Cronkite on TV every night. At his peak, those people were pulling in maybe 30 million.
Oh, actually, that's funny. Actually, that's weird. That surprised me for the US, because even in the UK, where most of our listeners for this podcast are from, I was seeing in the, I don't know, early noughties or late 90s, there was like a Christmas special.
I love it when you guys talk about the zeros and you call them the noughts, because it makes it sound so dirty. You call it the naughties, and I think
that more gives us an insight to your mind than right. So, but the point is, like a Christmas special of a really popular comedy over here, it's now defunct, called Only Fools and Horses. Its absolute peak was 24 million viewers, and that was a Christmas Day special. Right,
crazy,
and you go 600, and it's new. It's a new world. Which, by the way, you also think about I can't remember how many billion in the world are now online, but there was a billion that weren't online.
I think about 4 billion right now are online out of the 9.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And if the population is 7 billion, right, you kind of go, but it was anticipated in the next decade, there's something like 1 billion extra people are going to come online for the first time, and you go, holy crap. The UK population is about 70 million. So you've got 15 times that population coming online. Yeah. And they're going to want to buy stuff, do things, search for things.
Put it in perspective. They got 680 million followers. That's more than some countries in their population, right?
It's basically almost insane. 10x the UK's population, Topher. Yes. Every single human being, from babies up to...
That's over 2 times the amount of Americans living in the U.S.
Oh, shocking!
It's just mind-boggling. Yeah.
So to get on point, it's they're now lobbying, saying, and this is where it's interesting. Where does the line get drawn? So here's my question, Topher. Where does the line get drawn between? No, hold on. You need to adapt. You need to adapt to survive. It's survival of the fittest. The market's changed. Nobody's in real terms making money selling vinyl records anymore. Not in real terms, because the market's moved, right? Yeah. Nobody's making money selling dial-up internet. It's been superseded by better technology. Yeah. What does adapting draw the line versus, no, this is your USP. This is what you're known for. This is what you're branded for. You're now you're sacrificing that by trying to be something that you're not, and then the customers hate it. Where does that line get drawn?
I've got a strong thought on that, actually, because being in the pitching industry and helping people with their pitches, one of the things that irritates me to no end is when a company comes to me with their current pitch and they say things like, we're going to be the next Facebook, or we're going to be the next YouTube, or the next LinkedIn, or the next Tesla. Right.
Tell me why you hate that. Because, by the way, you could say what they've done is they've shortcut. If they've got something complicated and they go, we're like, and maybe this isn't the same distinction. We're like Uber, but for blank.
Yeah, we're the Uber of groceries. We're the Uber of whatever. Yes.
So here's why it's a metaphor. Like, yeah. Why doesn't it? Yeah. Why doesn't that work?
I don't like it for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't like it because unless you know what the person who's listening to your pitch feels about that current industry, you may be isolating them, right? Like if you hate Tesla, if your investor hates Tesla, and you come out and go, "We're going to be like the Tesla of groceries," you've immediately lost it, right? So it could work in some cases if you understand the psychology behind the person who's listening to your pitch. It could work, but because rarely you do. So that's number one reason why I don't. The other reason I don't is because it's not showing innovation, it's showing followers. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you think about that famous Wayne Gretzky quote where it says, "The reason I'm so good isn't because I skate to where the puck is, it's just where I skate to where the puck's going to be." When people say we're the next anything, they are essentially saying, we've found the puck, we're going to skate over there. And so like anytime you've noticed a trend, right? So if we look at, like, for example, next at your next mastermind, you're going to be talking about trend analysis and how to interpret trends and how to read them from a financial perspective, right? The thing about trend analysis, though, is that anytime you can spot a trend, that is an indicator of history, and it's an account of history and an indicator of where something is headed. But where it's headed isn't where it is. So when you say we want to be the next Uber, you're going to where it's at right now. I would recommend people say, like, so like go back to Instagram, right? They said, oh, in TikTok, they're taking our market share. How could we be like TikTok? What they should have said is, what trend is TikTok creating? And how can we be not the next TikTok, but how could we be the first thing beyond TikTok? And I think if people were to start asking themselves, how could we be the next thing beyond Tesla? How could we be the next thing beyond Facebook? How could we be the next thing beyond TikTok? That's a better question than how can we be like TikTok?
Right. Is it a very Peter Thiel, like blue ocean strategy type thinking?
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Blue ocean strategy.
Well, so it's interesting, and this kind of tees up the next segment in my mind. The trend, which concerns me, but it is the reality. So there's no point in fighting it. Mm-hmm. Is about shorter attention spans. So if you think about, going back to the comment earlier about television, it's like the whole family gather around the television, 3 channels, 4 channels, 5 channels. Whereas now everyone's consuming micro content, which is good and bad. It's good because it gives the opportunity for the little guy or the little girl to be able to sneak in and find a niche and be able to be dominant in that niche. But it also means there's a massive distraction of focus. It's so easy to get away, which is, in a sense, why I absolutely love, especially the name of the latest tool or product from our hero of the week.
Yes, let's talk about the hero of the week. One of your own, one of your clientele, actually.
Right. Our hero of the week is Arfa Iqbal. And Arfa first came to us. So this is not the business she's in now, but it's useful to understand backstory, where greatness, cream always rises to the top. When Arfa came to us, she was an employee. So it was her boss who was in our mastermind program. And they had I hope I remember this correctly, they had the largest Muslim-specific dating sites, so Orthodox Muslims specific dating sites in.
Interesting.
I don't know if it was the UK or it was Europe, but it was big. I mean, it was tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and paying subscribers. It was a big deal, and Arfa led the marketing for that business.
I didn't know this. Because all I know of Arfa is because she attends your masterminds usually online, so I've gotten to know her through that medium.
Yeah. So Arthur's great, and she was a superstar. And then when it came time for her to, she came to us and said, "Look, I'm ready to go out on my own now." So she'd spoken to her boss, and they'd figured it out, and it was all very amicable. She's like, "I'm just ready to fly," and she begged us basically. She went, "Look, your revenue threshold is a minimum. Back then it was $250,000. It's higher now for minimum threshold revenue that they've got to join to even join our entry level program. Right? For some of our programs, it's 7 figures and higher." So she went, like, "What do I have to do to be an exception to the rule? Because I'm just starting out."
Oh, I love that ambition.
Yeah, no, I love it. And we did allow her in below the threshold. She wasn't a startup, but she'd already got some revenue, but we let her in below the threshold, and she rose to the top and went above, got beyond that bar. So, but her, and we'll put the link in the show notes to make sure you're spelling her name correctly. But she has, really what she's about is translating customer psychology into breakthrough sales. So she translates psychology into the right language, the right copy to influence people to either buy or to opt in, etc. And a wonderful thing that she's got on her website is digital espresso. So
I love that, by the way.
It's such a great title.
I love it. Yeah.
Well, it just says it so well.
Yeah. Well, what I love, first off, I love the name Digital Espresso, but then I love her tagline is marketing shots for business owners or entrepreneurs. Yeah, marketing shots. That's so perfect. Like, what a beautiful picture that, like, as a pitching consultant, right? I love it when I hear a phrase that creates a powerful imagery, and marketing shots for entrepreneurs creates such a great imagery, because what do entrepreneurs want? We want something that's fast and powerful and convenient.
Right. I mean,
Like
that's
espresso.
it.
Yeah.
And that exactly, and that's where the metaphor just speaks. And of course, she's walking the talk, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
well-crafted words where you immediately go, "I love it." I mean, what is it? It's a weekly easy, but
Yeah.
like, that's not attractive or compelling for anybody. Now,
Yeah.
but of course, you don't get to know how good that content is unless you actually opt in, go to a website, sign up for Digital Espresso.
Yeah.
But your chances of her getting the opt-in are infinitely higher rather than, oh, sign up for my weekly marketing easy. Right? It's like Digital Espresso. Yeah.
We should probably, for the people listening, by the way, should probably go ahead and it's Arfa. It's not even Iqbal. It's Arfa. Let me just spell it. ARFASIRAIQBAL.com.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess digitalespresso.com is not available.
Correct.
But that's not where you should go to. But yeah, so I absolutely love that, and so a great example, by the way. So I mean, obviously she's got great content and well worth signing up for Digital Espresso. But a great example of marketing in action, just the right copy, the right words will convert more leads. Get more people, more prospects to opt in and become leads that you can then nurture and build a relationship with.
Yeah, and that's her specialty. By the way, speaking of the right words, is a great tee up for the book of the week. Harken back to our previous podcast where it was the marketing theme, where you had Scott Oldford as a guest. 181, episode 181, if you want to listen to it, which is amazing, by the way.
Yeah. So Scott, I mean, really, this book is epic. So the nuclear effect, the tagline for this book is the 6 pillars of building a 7+ figure online business. But even if you're not an online business, I'd still say get it, read it. I mean, you can find Scott on all the social platforms anyway. He's very prolific, or as he calls it, omnipresence. And it's really, again, about principles of influence. And so I would say this book is not about online business, despite the tagline. It's about how do you build a raving fan customer base? How do you drive engagement? And what I love most about Scott is it's not just kind of tactical bullshit, bait and switch, drama, exaggeration. It feels much more genuine, as proven by if you look on the back of the book. Just look at some of the names of the people that are endorsing the book. So, for example, there's Rowan Fraser from Digital Marketer fame. So, absolutely phenomenal entrepreneur. Rich Sheffrin, legendary marketer, kind of up there with the Jay Abrahams and the Dan Kennedys. There's also less known, but the real deal, a guy called Todd Herman, who was the author of a book called The Alter Ego Effect, which is a great book, Topher, which we have to talk about on a future podcast. And so there's some big endorsements for this book, The Nuclear Effect, and it's been out. It's only been out a couple of years, but it's it's 600+ 5-star ratings on Amazon. It's well worth checking out.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah. Well, and by the way, if you're questioning whether or not you should read the book, go to episode 181 and listen to your interview where you interviewed him, and you'll fall in love with this guy. I mean, he's so genuine and so real and so authentic, which is something I find to be very rare in the sales and marketing consultant expertise arena. So he is a breath of fresh air, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out the episode and you'll love it. And then finally, Topher, quote of the week. We're going to go contrarian and we're going to go full circle on this thing.
Yes,
and it's almost going to look like we planned out this episode, Topher. It's almost might give the viewers the false impression that we know what we're doing and we actually think.
And we have an outline and we plan it. Yes.
And it's a Henry Ford quote, which is, stopping advertising to save money is like stopping your watch to save time.
Oh, I love that quote.
Right. I mean, it kind of rhymes with another recent quote we did of the Walt Disney, I heard there's going to be a recession. I'm not going to participate, or I choose not to participate. It kind of rhymes similarly. People go, oh my God, business is struggling, so let's cut the advertising spend. It's unnecessary. That's just batshit crazy. Batshit crazy.
Awesome.
If
great quote.
you've got the right target market.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, we've got our next episode is going to be all about legal and governance. So if you have not yet subscribed, and commented, please do, especially hit the subscribe button. So the next episode, you can get notified.
Can I do a teaser?
It's released. Yeah.
Can I do a teaser? Because I was Topher.
By the way, it is your podcast, so I don't know why you're asking me, but yes, go for it.
I'm making it sound ad lib, like off the cuff, when actually clearly we thought this through in great detail in advance. But it occurs to me that spontaneously that we should tease the future episode. So it's fascinating for me. So in this episode, there's so many lessons for business owners, but there's a gentleman who I'm not going to comment on him individually now or reveal his identity, but by many people's judgment was riding high. The whole world was his oyster. Tremendously rich, uber lucrative, profitable businesses, and he's lost it all. He being sued and lost hundreds of millions.
Yes.
In one fell swoop. Well, I'm sure somebody listening said, I'd like to have hundreds of millions to lose. I think learn the principles, because this guy made a couple of terrible mistakes, and I will tell you, it ties in with marketing in a sense. It ties in with marketing. Correct. Yeah. So it ties in with marketing in terms of what he said and how he positioned it. But legal, where's the line? Position it gets the attention, but at a certain point you go, no, that's just downright dumb, wrong, and it will bite you in the ass. So
and it bit him in the ass big time. And I will tell you that every person watching or listening to this podcast either hates him viscerally or worships and loves the guy. There's very little in between. You either hate him or love him. And we're going to talk about him on the next episode.
Very good. So with all that said, as always, Topher, the focus of these episodes is based on one simple premise. If you want a better business, you need to be a better business owner. See you next time.
Well said. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.